What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com, coming at you with another AMA. This one is all about disordered eating tendencies, something I'm very passionate about talking about and helping people with. But before we dive into this, let's roll the intro. All right, we are back. The question today is brought to us from Lily, and she asks, can you please talk about anorexia? I have a family member who loves fitness and everything health. Over the years, it has taken a turn for the worse. Why do some people go over the tipping point, and how do you help them? All these restrictive diets lately seem to make it harder to convince my family member they are harming themselves. This person knows they need to change, but can't break the cycle. How did you heal and how did you get past the mental hurdle? Was it a multi-step process? This one's pretty tough because how disordered eating tendencies manifest themselves is going to be different from person to person. For me, it was basically the first competition I did was the catalyst for my disordered eating. I got the leanest I'd ever gotten before, lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks, looked better than I ever had before. But after that show was over, I went on a binge fast and gained like 20 pounds overnight. And that really messed with my head. So then I kind of fell into this disordered eating tendency of binging and then purging and binging and purging. And that lasted for 2 or 3 years. And it took a toll on me for sure. I know several people that have struggled with anorexia, and that can basically be defined as trying to always be thinner, having this body dysmorphia in a sense in which you feel like you are fat, but that's not the case at all. Couldn't be farther from the truth. You're incredibly lean, but not in a healthy way. Like anorexia to the point where you're not getting ample nutrition to fuel your body appropriately for the day's tasks at hand. Some people struggle with binging. Some people struggle with purging. Some people struggle with anorexia. Some people struggle with body dysmorphia. Some people struggle with a combination of all the above. And how you talk to somebody about that can be challenging because unless you've been there yourself, it's hard for them to find you relatable, which is why I found it so good for me to open up about that and make that a part of the content that I put out so that people can find that relatable. Because truth be told, more competitors deal with some form of disordered eating than not, in my opinion. I feel like they don't often talk about it. It's kind of a touchy subject. Not many people open up about it, but it is absolutely there and runs rampant in the competitive niche as well. So when it comes to your family member, how you should go about talking about it, if they know that it's not healthy, they know that they need to change, like that's a huge step in the right direction because they're at least self-aware enough to recognize that what they're doing is not optimal and they need to break free of that cycle. How you go about breaking free of that cycle is a different story altogether, though. For me, it was very important to recognize that simply being thin, being lean, being low body fat percentage is not the end-all, be-all, best-case scenario. For me, going about it from a bodybuilding standpoint in which you have a tangible building phase and a tangible cutting phase was key. For instance, if you're constantly losing body fat and eating at a deficit and trying to maintain this show day level of conditioning that's just honestly not sustainable year-round, you're not going to look better year after year after year because in that context, you can't possibly optimize for muscle growth because you need to be in a caloric surplus to truly optimize for muscle growth. So if you, like for me, I'm just going to speak of this in terms of what I've personally dealt with because that's what I know. When I recognized that in order for me to look better every time I stepped on stage, I had to embrace a legitimate building phase, in which case I ate at a caloric surplus, trained hard, built muscle, and accepted the accompanying fat gain that came with that. That was the pivotal shift for me because it's like, look, I know I'm not going to get better if I just stay continually this lean. I won't be able to optimize muscle growth. I won't be able to look better year after year. And you see this pan out amongst many competitors. Many competitors that compete every single year, multiple times a year, they spend more time in a deficit than they do in a building phase, and they wind up getting worse and worse with each year that passes, because being that level of body fat for too long, eating at a deficit for too long, that can be very catabolic towards building more muscle, obviously, and then also the muscle that you have on your frame currently. And your goal should be to maximize muscle building in a surplus and muscle retention in a deficit. And if you're constantly in a deficit, it becomes much harder to retain the muscle that you've built. So if you're anorexic and you're not having this period of building, you're going to be catabolic. Your hormones are going to take a hit. Your metabolic rate is going to be depressed. There's just a host of negatives that come with only doing that single phase for too long. So for me as a bodybuilder, the term maintenance is not really in my vocabulary. Like, I don't want to maintain, because maintaining by definition is not really a thing. I mean, you're getting older with each day that passes. As you get older, as you age, your body's more likely to degrade unless you act in a way that preserves it. So you can't really maintain your composition. Like, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. That's what it kind of all boils down to. And when I realized that in order to get better, I had to go through a building phase, that opened my mind to the idea of being receptive to going through a building phase, and therefore embracing the healthy body fat that comes with being in a surplus, embracing the fact that, hey, look, if I do this, I know that the next time I lean down, I'm only going to look even leaner, even better, even more chiseled, more shapely, more proportionate, more symmetrical, all the good things that come with it. But I had to embrace that building phase that accompanies the cutting phase and have that yin-yang relationship. And I feel like that's harder to get across the general public that isn't competing, because they're not thinking of things in terms of, hey, look, I'm going to step on stage, I'm trying to get better with each year that passes. So it's harder to sell that idea of a building and cutting phase to them. But the truth of the matter is that is incredibly relevant to all of us, whether we're competing or not. Some people have said that if you're not competing, if you're just general population wanting to be healthier, it's not worthwhile to think of things in terms of building and cutting. But I completely disagree. Your body benefits from times in a caloric deficit, and it benefits from times in a caloric surplus. Like, it just does. Like, there's a yin-yang relationship there that is applicable to everybody, whether you step on stage or not. You're going to have some hormonal benefits that come from being in a surplus, some hormonal benefits that come from being in a deficit. You're going to have compositional changes that come from being in a surplus, compositional changes that come from being in a deficit. One is not better than the other. They're both different, but optimizing for each phase is what guarantees that the opposite phase benefits as well. Like, you can't optimize for cutting if you don't truly make the most of building, and vice versa. So once I was able to recognize that and flip the script, it made it much more easy for me to embrace the fact that, hey, look, in order for this to be sustainable, I can't just stay in a cutting phase. And therefore, it made no sense for me to just focus on being lean and have these anorexic tendencies. So that's what I would try to break down to your family member there, Lily. Hopefully, they're receptive to that idea, to that notion. They're more than welcome to email me if there's anything that I personally can help, because, I mean, like I said, I struggled with this for 2 or 3 years myself. Many people have struggled with it much longer. It is totally debilitating. When you are fixated on food 24/7, 365, it's hard to see life outside of that. But there is so much more to life outside of that. So if there's anything that I can say to them directly, and they would benefit from getting in contact with me, by all means, send them my email, let me get in touch, and I'll happily help in any way I can. So hopefully that answered your question, Lily. You requested the chocolate malt, so I will send some chocolate malt your way. For anybody that does not know how these AMA videos work, if you submit me a question via the Google form in the description below, and I use that question on an AMA, I will send you some keto bricks of a flavor of your choosing as a token of my appreciation for the well thought out question. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.